really speaking, I was a little bit concerned about Chris's safety and the lads that he was with. And when people started clambering and climbing out of the pens, you realised that there was something wrong, maybe distress, maybe discomfort. But then when people started being pushed down off the fences and falling onto the pitch edge and onto the pathway, you knew there was something horribly wrong. People were climbing out, and you could see them, even from my distance, you could see them climbing out, frightened. I couldn't actually see the looks on their face. It was their actions, their body movements, people screaming and trying to pull people out.
I jumped back down, got hold of a policeman, and he looked at the fence. He was looking at the people whose faces was jammed against the fence. By this time, the fence was beveled a little bit. With the force that was the crowd, the fences started to be beveling, buckling. I grabbed him by the arm and dragged him towards the fence, and he declined. He pushed me away. I grabbed a policewoman by the arm and dragged her towards the fence. She was going backwards, away from me. I was shouting, you're going to help these people and all that. Get the fire brigade to cut the fence.
Vaikka poliisit kentällä tajusivat ongelman vakavuuden, valvontakeskuksen johto ei sitä tajunnut. He luulivat, että katsojat yrittivät vallata juoksuradan. Peli jatkui.
I suppose the first thoughts were, it's a pitch invasion, more trouble. I didn't realise how the penny never dropped on it. Something serious was going on is beyond me. Especially when you think the police control box was at our end of the ground.
It wasn't a pitch invasion. It didn't look like one. It didn't have the hallmarks of a pitch invasion. It was obvious that it was the fans trying to get out and spilling out onto the pitch in the perimeter track was linked with what I could see as the very horrible overcrowding in the terrace.
I am still mystified as to how they, with their veritable battery of monitors, couldn't see what was going on in front of their eyes. If they didn't believe the monitors, then their own naked eye could tell them that there was something wrong in those pens. I find that very difficult to come to terms with the professional people could be so blind.
15.03 peli vain jatkuu. Katsomoiden etusosassa jotkut olivat niin heikossa kunnossa, että he pyörtyivät ja jotkut kuolivat.
We shouted and there was people dying at the front. I just remember hearing that and thinking, could it be happening?
You could smell vomit then. Sweat and like a funny feeling of variance around you. You know, when you feel that it's panicking now. You know, you've got to get out of there.
He was only a young lad, in his early teens, I think. He had a white shirt on. Had him by his collar. Just had hold of him by his collar. He couldn't really get hold of anywhere else. It was his hair or his collar, because by this time, I don't even know if he was conscious. I had hold of his collar, and I think somebody else had hold of his shirt, his sleeve, and we were trying to pull him up to get him to stand up, just even chest height. And as I say, the surge just took him away from us. Just pulled out of our hands.
Kello oli vasta 4 minuuttia yli 3. Pahin oli vielä edessä. Katsomoissa paine oli jo kriittinen. Tutkintalautakunta laski jälkeenpäin, että katsomassa numero 3 oli 500 ihmistä yli turvarajan.
Their conclusion, there were 500 people too many.
The density of the crowd was far greater at the front portion, and this is clear from anybody's observation of the photograph of pen 3 taken just after the kick-off, something like 3 minutes past or 4 minutes past 3, we were able to calculate an estimate of the people in Pen 3 at that time, which was some 1,576, which was 50% in excess of what it should have been.
Vain aidat pitivät väkijoukon katsomossa. Yksi niistä murtui.
The barrier snapped. And anyone that was immediately against the barrier just fell forward onto us. The barrier hit me on the back of my left leg. People just went over then and they were just grabbing at whatever they could. I could feel my hair getting pulled, grabbing at your shirt, people's hands on my legs, trying to pull themselves up. And then you just feel the hand letting go. All you could feel was other people's limbs, arms, legs, maybe bodies underneath you. You were doing your best to keep your feet off, but you've got to imagine you can't even look down to see where you're putting your feet. You could only feel for the concrete and do your best not to stand on anybody and hurt.
5 minuuttia yli 3 peli keskeytettiin. Lisää poliisia tuli kentälle valvontakeskuksen käskystä. Siellä tilannetta pidettiin yhä valtausyrityksenä. Ylikonstaapeli John Morgan oli yhä lähellä sisäänpääsyportteja.
Suddenly I heard a message being passed over the radio to the effect that all available officers were to go to the track because the fans were invading the pitch.
Poliisiradion viestit kuunneltiin jälkeenpäin. Niistä vahvistui, että vielä tässä vaiheessa poliisien komentaja David Dokumentti oli lähinnä huolissaan yleisestä järjestyksestä. Hän kutsui kentälle poliisikoirat ja kaikki vapaat poliisit.
What greeted me when I reached that position, I will never forget so long as I live. Because there were people being pressed up against the fence. The faces were blue. The tongues were lolling out of the mouths. There was mucus and blood. Arms pressed up against the fence, cyanosed, blue. They were being pressed up against the netting, and it was bulging under the pressure, under the weight. And they were being, obviously, maintained in an upright position, although I believe that some of them may already have been dead at that stage. It was a devastating thing to see. There were officers tending injured people. I could see people climbing backwards into the west stand, being hauled upwards by the people who were up there. People climbing over the fence onto the track. It was an amazing sight.
Eräs poliisi kentällä kutsui paikalle ambulanssia. Valvontakeskuksessa David Dokumentti tajusi vasta nyt tilanteen vakavuuden. Pakoon päässeet katsojat kiipesivät takaisin aidalle ja yrittivät vetää ulos vielä loukussa olevia. Eräs aidalle kiivenneistä oli Brian Doyle.
I jumped up onto the fence and leaned over. I was grabbing people's hands to try and drag them up. But it was hopeless. It was like they were stuck together. Or they was... most of them couldn't move their arms, couldn't lift their arms up. They was just screaming for help. I was screaming to them, just get back and all that. There's people getting crushed. You know, they knew. They was all screaming back to me. I could hear it. We can't move anywhere. There's no one moved. We can't go back. We can't go forward. I got hold of some woman's hand. Like, more than anything, I wanted to get her out. She just let go of my hands. The feelings, the strength of her hands went. Whether she gave up or through it was shock, I don't know. It's the feeling of watching the life and the colour of someone just going out of them, and you can't do nothing about it. helplessness, and anger. There was a lot of anger. I would have gladly changed my place for that woman that day. It's when you have hold of someone, you know, alive, and you can feel the life draining out of them, then it does something to you.
Quite quickly, I decided that the best thing for me to do would be to go around to the tunnel. And I called to a number of officers who were standing at the edge of the pitch for them to join me. I asked them to follow me. I started to go down into pen 3, pushing people back, grabbing hold of them and pushing them back down the tunnel behind me. And I was followed down the terrace by other officers. I worked my way down to the front of the terrace, again to be confronted by a horrific sight, which I shall never forget, which I think about every day. A pile of bodies crushed up against the wall, waist deep.
The lad had to pull me out backwards over the bodies. You couldn't move your legs by then. I was dragged out from behind, as I say, as were other people that were where we were standing. Once I was free, I turned and started to do the same for other people. Once you could see how many people were on the floor, it was unbelievable. As if someone had let a bomb off, the amount of people that were there on the floor. You wouldn't have thought they'd just been crushed. By this time, there was 1 or 2 policemen on the terraces. Some of them were reviving people, others were standing around who looked bewildered, lost, helpless, I suppose, and shocked. Just carried on taking people out then. The ones that were dead, we just put to one side. And the ones that were alive, other people were taken out onto the pitch. I mean, it was one thing seeing men die there, but young kids and girls. Shouldn't happen, should it?
3:15.
Kello 15:03 poliisitarkastaja David Dokumentti on yhä valvontakeskuksessa. Tuomari Taylorin mukaan Dokumenttin kyky päätöksentekoon ja käskyjen antamiseen näytti hävinneen. Tuomarin mukaan hän jähmettyi. Tämä selittää sen, että kun Jalkapalloliiton Graham Kelly kävi keskuksessa, Dokumentti ei kertonut totuutta tilanteesta, vaan syytti katsojia.
Chief Superintendent Dokumentti gave an order at 2:50 or thereabouts to open the gates. At 3:15, when he's approached by officials from the Football Association, Mr. Kelly and Mr. Curtin, he allows them to leave his police control box with the impression, if not more, that the gates have been kicked open by football supporters. Mr. Kelly then goes on nationwide TV and says, well, there's 2 theories. It's the fans' theory and the police theory. Mr. Dokumentti, some 6, 7, 8 weeks later in the witness box, makes a public apology that if he did say what it's alleged he said, then it wasn't true.
On the pitch,
Kentällä sekä katsojat että poliisit tekivät kaikkensa elvyttääkseen uhraja.
Like you'd be in a war. There was penalty area, was just littered with people lying on the floor. All you could see was every people getting their chests hit
the bodies were laid on the grass to be tended by firemen and St John's ambulance personnel. And I assisted them to do that. I think I carried 2 or 3 bodies by that means to that end of the ground.
It dawned upon you the seriousness of what was going on. 6 or 7 lads carrying somebody on a hoarding with their arm just flopping up and down, and you're saying to yourself, that fella's dead. What the hell's going on here? There was people lying on the pitch. There was a coldness, a literally coldness in the stands. I was frozen with fear because I was worried about Christopher. It went on. I stayed there, I think, till about 4:15. I'd seen sights at that game that no person should see or should be involved in. I walked out with thousands of people, and it was like attending a funeral as we walked out the stand. There were just ambulances, police cars, fire engines jammed together within about 20 feet of the gate. As I walked up the Lepping Lane, and all I wanted to do was to see sight of Chris. Unfortunately, I got halfway up to the point where we'd arranged to meet, and Chris wasn't there. And I was given the news by Jason that Chris was seriously injured. He then told me in a second breath that Chris had died. I didn't believe it for a minute. I refused to accept it. I then went over to a police lady and asked her, would she escort me back to the ground, as I'd just been given the news that my son had died. From then on, I would say I had sheer 5 hours of hell.
Barry Devonside spent those 5 hours looking for his son, Chris. He finally identified his body that night in the gym at the football ground, which had been used as a makeshift mortuary. The West Midlands Police Inquiry Team have continued to investigate the disaster at Hillsborough.
Stuart, some actions for you. Sir. I can just draw your attention to this paragraph here in the action. It's to try and obtain an up-to-date photograph of the deceased. There's probably no need to tell you. But it's on the action nevertheless. It's a sensitive approach.
95 ihmisen kuolemasta pidetään kuolemansyytutkimus, ja niistä saattaa seurata oikeusjuttuja.
I'll always think of them people on that day. You hope maybe one day you'll be able to put it behind you. But in another way, you don't want to forget them people who stood next to you.
There's people saying a lot of the senior officers are broken men. Well, there's a lot of broken families in it.
forget what happened to other people, the ones that didn't come back. I'll never forgive people, and I'll never forget it for what went on that day.
Raportissaan tuomari Taylor sanoo, että vaikka syitä oli monia, suurin syy katastrofiin oli South Yorkshiren poliisin kyvyttömyys hallita tilannetta. Tutkimuksissa poliisit syyttivät katsojia ja jalkapalloseuraa. Tuomarin mukaan tämä epärealistinen asenne antaa aihetta ihmetellä, oppiko poliisi tästä mitään.